Today, I really want to talk about the 7 stages of awakening, and this feels particularly relevant because there's been a lot of conversation around how does one lead to healing in the family system? Because I know that was a topic of conversation, especially with the Black Sheep video that I posted. If you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out. I'll link it in the description below. How does one, especially perhaps those who took on the role of the Black Sheep, or anyone who's awakening in a family system that's still asleep, how does one heal in an environment? And especially for those who can't move away, who are still in that environment, how do you bring your clarity, your awakening, and your healing into the family? I think that this framework is so important to understand. And if someone had explained this to me earlier on, I think in my healing journey, it probably would have helped me understand the energetics and all of the different puzzle pieces that need to come into play that are in your control, but they're not typically, it's not what you think in terms of helping your family heal. A lot of the spiritual wellness world, especially on Instagram and maybe even on YouTube as well, really focus in on one stage, maybe even live there forever. And so we'll cover where spiritual bypassing lives and what point in this process does one inevitably lead to a shift or guide a shift in the family structure. The first phase of the 7 phases of spiritual awakening is sleep. This is when you are pretty much fully unconscious. You are fully on autopilot. This might be where some of your family members are that are still causing or perpetuating dysfunction and a lot of grief and pain and all those things. We might think we're victims in a world that is unfair or victims of certain circumstances. We might more deeply identify with the institutions, with the matrix of, the old paradigm in general. A lot of our worth may come from external roles or social roles. We might still kind of identify with ego-driven pursuits and identities and all those things. Sleep very much is a part of the spiritual awakening process because we have to fall asleep to reawaken, right? So at some point in life, we were all asleep. We were all living out our unconscious patterns and our generational traumas and all of those things. Often we're very disconnected from our bodies in this phase. We can feel very overstimulated, or on the other side of things, very numb. This is, again, another way of saying it, this is the matrix state. Being asleep is when you are fully immersed in the matrix. We're just going through the motions, doing what we think we're supposed to do. We may look very successful on paper, but generally feel quite empty or disconnected internally. Living in a life of reactivity, and we don't have so much control over our circumstances. In this sense, we're a victim, per se, of our own conditioning and our own lack of awareness around it. The second phase is what I would call the trigger or the catalyst. And this is when something happens to someone that shatters the illusion. It's also what I would call the dark night of the soul, where something shifts your perception, something knocks it all down, right? So for me, I think a lot of my I had multiple phases of awakening, but the really big one was heartbreak, romantic heartbreak. One particular situation that really jolted me awake and when I realized, why am I living in the city that I'm in? Literally, what have I been living here for? What am I doing in this job that I'm doing? Like, why am I trying to climb this ladder? I don't care about this stuff. In fact, I hate this stuff. It brings out the worst in me. I'm angry, I'm competitive, I'm, not the qualities that I truly feel are mine deep down, that are truly reflective of my soul. So that experience was immensely painful. Disillusionment in general, I think, is probably amongst the deepest pain, because you have the rug pulled from underneath you and you generally land on your ass in some way, and to be on the ground and realize, oh my God, I've been wrong about things, or what have I been doing? Who am I? Those are really scary and disillusioning things to confront. For other people, this could happen through a breakdown, right? Or like a midlife crisis kind of thing, identity crisis. Typically that's like I said, I mean, for me, it was definitely an identity crisis. Why did I think I liked that? Why did I pretend that I liked doing those things? Why did I tell myself that's who I am or all I have to offer? Why did I keep myself in that little box? So it could be like loss, it could be, you know, like I said, heartbreak, it could be the death of someone, it could be a betrayal, a major betrayal. It could be illness, burnout. Sometimes it could also be like through psychedelics, or a euphoric experience, or out-of-body experience, something that shifts the way that you look at things. Also near-death experiences or things like that where you might literally die or have some kind of traumatic event like a car accident where you don't necessarily, maybe you don't lose consciousness or anything, but you know, it highlights the fragility of life and changes your perspective on everything. And through that sort of dark night of the soul, we'll say, or again, potentially it could be not a dark night, but usually it leads to some kind of shattering of illusion. And so there's pain in that, but it's that rupture moment that breaks you open and you start to realize there's more to life. The third phase, and this is a really interesting phase in my opinion, because I think that the third phase is where a lot of spiritual teachers and influencers live in indefinitely. This is called the mind awakening or the light bulb phase. So the mind awakening is when you wake up, right? This is the first glimpse of an awakening, the good part, right? Like this is when you've gone through the dark night of the soul, you've experienced the rupture or the shattering of the illusion, and you see for the first time in your life, oh my God, there's more to life, there's more to life. Like it's a very exciting time, right? Where everything is new. It's like experiencing the world for the first time almost, but in a new way. You see the value of things, you understand the fragility, everything is a miracle. And in this time you may become obsessed with reading, you know, spiritual books. You might become really obsessed with like educating yourself and doing all kinds of spiritual practices that help inform you more. You might become obsessed with seeking truth. Everything makes sense. And very important, there's an urgency in this phase to wake everyone else up. You see it and now you want everyone else to see it. So you might start preaching. This is where evangelism comes in, and you might talk extensively, and you might even have a little sense of superiority, right? There may be a little ego play here where you think you're better a little bit than those who are still on the other side. There's almost like a feeling of completion. It's a false sense of completion, but that can come for sure. And yeah, like I said, I think a lot of spiritual creators live in this space indefinitely, where spiritual bypassing can live. We talk about positive affirmations. We talk about the power of, you know, positive thinking, and if you believe it, you can do it, and all these things. And while those are all very true and very real, they sort of miss a lot of the work. Like that's one realm of reality. If you only go to that realm and you just don't go any further, it's a little bit of an illusion, right? It's not fully encompassing the entire reality of awakening. And in this phase alone, you're not really fully connected to your creative potential yet. Yes, you can start directing your mind to all the positive things. This is the benefit of this phase is because you're awake and because you start seeking truth, you'll start surrounding yourself with people who are on the path. This is like the entry point. You did it. You might think you're the shit, but you got a long way to go. You're still like, you know, you're not there, but you're now on the path. Like you've gotten in, and now the journey begins now. I think that's the confusion, is like a lot of people think once you've gone through the dark night of soul, you wake up and then you're in this light bulb phase that like you're now enlightened. And I'm sorry, and I'm talking to my past self as well, by the way. You're not done. The journey has only just begun. You have a lot of stuff ahead of you. I'll just say that much. This is the pretty part. This is the fun part. The reality is that it's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies most of the time. In fact, the deeper you get into healing, the more you have to start walking through some dark hallways to get to the real light, right? So the key point here is that in this phase, it's all mental. You're awake and you're aware, but it's all in the mind space, right? So You can talk about things, you can understand things, you'll probably want to be in environments that are there and that are fundamentally rooted in truth and all those things, and that's beautiful and that's amazing. But you're still only up here, and there's limitation in that. Not because you're not where you should be, not because this is not an absolutely necessary part of the awakening, but the mind space is not where our creative potential lives. We'll come back to that. As I said, many spiritual bypassers will live here forever because this is an easy place to live. This is not where the work is. This is where it's fun to talk about and conceptualize all these beautiful truths without actually living them. The fourth phase we'll call the purge or the void. And this is where the true shadow work and ego death begin. So the purge is a phase where, or the void is a phase where everything kind of starts to crumble. It's where you start moving downwards from the mind, very slowly, but very surely. It stops being, it's like life shows you, or your soul shows you, okay, so this is what life is. This is truth, cool, right? Those are the patterns that I'm aware of now, cool. The void is when you start to integrate that awareness, right? It's when you start to realize in a feeling way, a feeling driven way, not just conceptually, but you start to feel into all the roles that you've played, all the patterns, all the things that keep you small, all the parts of your life, the physical manifestations of those things, where you start to kind of have to face that in awareness, not just in the mind, but in the heart space, in the body. And there's a lot of grief there. There's a lot of rawness because you're sort of stripped away from all the illusions. Everything is gone, including the illusions of the light bulb phase. This is when you realize, like, oh my God, okay, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, never mind. It's sort of the crash after the high. It's when you realize, like, okay, this is the work. This is the path. The one that the influencers and, a lot of these spiritual teachers don't talk much about. But this is the one that, like, your soul, if you're really serious about, truly reaching alignment, the real kind of alignment, and the truest sense of creative potential and free will and whatever else, however you want to define all those things, this is the way. This is the real way. This is the real work. Here you'll start to see the depths of your conditioning, your trauma, your wounding. You'll start to feel them raw. Your body will no longer, there's not much walls anymore protecting, guarding, all that stuff. It's there, it's out in the open. You feel it, you see it, and identities start to dissolve. You might feel very lost. And this is when the nervous system cannot be bypassed anymore. Because at this point, you're not just expanding, and you're certainly not just expanding conceptually, but you are excavating. You're going through the dark cabinet that I referenced in one of my previous videos. You're going through all the, the attic and the basement and, the dark rooms of the house, and you are getting rid of the shit that's in there that's been pulling you down. Because the truth is, you can't just make, positive affirmations and think about the life that you want and then move forward and not expect that the rooms, those dark rooms with all these storage and boxes and things that aren't yours are not going to catch up to you and try to pull you backwards. You have to go through the stuff. You got to go through the files and clean it all out and start fresh. And then you can move forward, right? Stage 5. This is called the body awakening, or the embodiment phase. The purge and the void are where we start to move into the nervous system and the subconscious to clear out. And so the body phase, the body awakening, is when we start integrating that wisdom. We get rid of all the stuff, and then we start to integrate that work. We start to replace it with new stories, new beliefs, all of that stuff. And not just, again, conceptually, but in the body, somatically, in the nervous system. This is also considered a descent, right? You're moving downwards. When I talk about descent, and I use that word again periodically throughout my videos, I'm talking about deeper, going deeper, not just living in the surface of these spiritual concepts and truths, but going deep into them, feeling them, embodying them. That's what the human experience is all about, right? Because in truth, I believe our souls already know this information, but we come on earth to forget and remember and embody. And there's so much more wisdom in feeling those spiritual truths. This phase, you pretty much stop trying to be high vibe. Certain influencers are going to rub you the wrong way. You start becoming much more attuned to energy. It's no longer who's saying what, but the energy behind people's words, including, and very much including, people in the spiritual world. You start becoming really attuned to truth. It's no longer just the concept up here. It's what feels real, what feels true, what feels honest and raw. And you might start gravitating to people who are truly embodied in the truth rather than just talking about it, rather than just skimming the surface of it and conceptualizing it and bypassing that embodiment and that work. And likewise, you'll start to be more honest with yourself, with other people. It's no longer putting up a show. You don't care anymore. You actually might not care what anyone thinks, to be honest with you. This is a phase where you start to care how you feel and what feels true in your body and healthy and good and all the things that are an extension of truth. You start to prioritize safety over speed. It's no longer how quickly can I start the business, how, I should be doing XYZ. It's what feels aligned and good in my body. I trust my timing. I know that my compass internally is smarter than anything else anyone else can say to me. It's smarter than what my mind wants me to do. I can lean into that. You might start to live more simply. Maybe you go from being really, really active in these spiritual communities and spiritual workshops or classes or whatever, and you start stripping back. Maybe it's because you become more minimal. Maybe you become more introverted and grounded in your day-to-day and your routine. This is the beginning of real power by the truest sense of the word. Real power, presence. Sixth phase is what we call embodied consciousness. This is when alignment meets rooted wisdom. This is where we start to embody and maintain clear and conscious boundaries, clarity, sovereignty, and conscious or soul-led service. This is when we truly step into our power, our soul's power, where we start to see we are capable of so many amazing, incredible things. Things that you just don't have access to when you're still stuck in the matrix, in the survival consciousness. This is when you hold power in your body, when your voice alone has impact, where you start having control over the impact that you have in your world, in your circumstances, on other people, on yourself. This is where you start to step into creative potential, where you start to become a conscious creator of your reality. You have reclaimed your intuition by this point completely. And you move from a place of deep resonance, not from fear. And this is a very important phase to discuss, especially when we talk again about healing generational trauma, healing the family, restructuring family dynamics, right? This is the phase when you become much less interested in convincing others and you become devoted to living in truth. And you may serve other people, but it is not from a place of ego. It's not from a place of performance or proving. It's from a place of integration and embodiment. So this is what I call the anchor point. If you want to heal your family, the trauma, the patterns, the dysfunction, not just your family, right? But also the world. This process, you cannot convince your family into healing if you haven't truly embodied the frequency of presence, the frequency of love, the frequency of acceptance. You must move toward truth on your own, in your own path, in your own time. And stop focusing so much on what's happening out there and start focusing on your inner landscape, your congruence or lack thereof, right? Your devotion to your healing and your embodiment of truth, not just your awareness of it, right? Very different things. Your embodiment, your integration. If you become devoted to that process, as painful and difficult as it may be, and it may take time, But if you are devoted to that, you will eventually reach the 6th phase, the anchor point, when you anchor that frequency. We live in an energetic universe. You can talk all you want about whatever you want to talk about, but until you embody and master a certain frequency, your impact on other people is not going to be what you think it is, or it's not going to be what you want it to be. If you want to see it in anyone else, you have to become it first. This is what you're moving towards. It's no longer how can I change this other person, it's how can I move towards truth? How can I move towards truth? Me. I am the anchor point. I am the one who's going to anchor this new frequency. I'm not going to just preach all this knowledge that I've learned. I'm going to anchor the frequency in my family. When I live my truth, they will automatically start to piece by piece, moment by moment, person by person, naturally soften and unravel themselves. And it is inevitable. This is when your soul starts to do the work for you. This is when you don't have to try. In fact, you probably won't want to. Now, don't get me wrong. In this phase, there's still moments of grief. There's still moments of dysfunction, right? Your family is still not going to understand you at certain points. But you will notice that dysfunction, the miscommunications are not often. And when they do happen, nothing is as explosive or damaging as it used to, because you have boundaries, you have the awareness, and not just the mental awareness, but again, the embodied awareness. Even when these things happen, just because of your frequency, where you are at, the anchoring of that frequency, it has a ripple effect. So when these things happen, they become now opportunities for seeds to be planted into the family tree. So every miscommunication, every argument becomes, plant a seed, plant a seed. Here's a seed of awakening, here's a seed of awakening, because you are showing up now with your embodiment. So you're going to show up with clearer boundaries. You're going to naturally have an influence, a ripple effect, a little planting seeds of consciousness throughout your family with every single interaction that you have. You might not see it immediately, but it happens, and eventually there will be a moment in time where you look around and you think, things are different, and not just in me. Things are different. People are following suit. Maybe not in drastic ways, maybe they're not quite where you are, but you start seeing things move. Things start to shift, very slowly maybe, but they shift. And after years of trying to turn things around and unscrew screws that just weren't budging, even little shifts are amazing. I mean, just that means they're moving and that things are still in motion. So this is what we're moving towards. If you want to heal the generational trauma and the dysfunction and have your family hear you and see you, you have to move towards truth, embodied truth for yourself. You have to stop focusing on them and you have to start focusing on you. Phase 7 is what we will call soul leadership or New Earth architect. This is essentially the finish line of the spiritual journey, the spiritual path. This is enlightenment. This is self-actualization. This is conscious creation by definition. This is when you have worked through your karma and you are now a vessel for raising consciousness. And here's something to be aware. This may or may not come in this lifetime, but it's this phase where you really kind of act as a lighthouse. You basically say, you may build an empire, you may build a community, you may build something. You probably build something, you do something, you create something that becomes a lighthouse for other people. Maybe it's just using your voice, maybe it's just sharing your ideas, maybe it's writing something, creating art. Create something that becomes a place where others can come and take what they need and find their own true north. This is not a place where you try. This is a place where you exist, and your existence, your purest, rawest existence, has a healing effect on the world around you, on your family, on community, on the world, on yourself, on everyone. Just your existence. This is the truest, purest form of life. This is just pure light. When all the shadows are integrated, everything is embodied, and now you get to just be a beacon of light for others. And here you channel with purpose and clarity. And again, of course, you're still human here. So you still experience grief, you still experience desire and doubt and so on. But you never forget who you are. You're able to hold polarity without collapsing. And you become a bridge between two dimensions, essentially. It's really kind of the human embodiment of heaven on earth. Another thing to note is there often are spirals and returns. This is not a linear process. Technically, in the big picture, you are moving upwards, hence, ascension and so on. But the journey is not linear. Oftentimes we got to circle back, we got to revisit a certain lesson, we got to revisit a certain wound, we got to integrate deeper, we got to move forward, we're going to move back, we're going to move side, blah, blah, blah. Understand that if you feel like you're moving backwards, you're never moving backwards. So wherever you are in this journey, I want you to know you're exactly where you are supposed to be. The more you move towards whatever feels true, what is that part of you that feels infinite, that feels wise, that feels calm, while other parts of you may feel more urgent or tight or controlling or scared? What's the part of you that's quietly there, listening, watching, guiding? That is your truth. Follow it relentlessly. When you get triggered by your family, when you get triggered by the world, come back to that place. Follow that place. Find that place. Life will continue, and your soul will continue to give you little signs, little whispers. Maybe the job, you get little whispers. I need to get out of this job. There's something that feels wrong about. Listen. Start following the nudges. Don't wait for the nudges to become screams. Listen to it. It knows the way. And not just the way to what you want, but the way to healing for your family, for the world. So follow it. Even when you think it's not clear, even when you don't know and you're confused, it's those moments, the moments of confusion, the moments of great pain and grief, that's when your soul is the closest. So lean in, and you will be amazed. Every single time you do it, you build that muscle in your brain and your body, and you start to soften into that wisdom. The stronger it gets, the clearer it gets, and the more it starts to have an impact on your life. I think it's worthy of identifying in a really brutally honest way. What phase do you think you're in? It can help you understand the greater context of what you're moving through, where you're going, and where you're moving from. It can just be very validating. And are you still trying to heal your family? Or are you becoming the healing? Woo! Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what phase you think you're in, what thoughts you have on this framework, and also, what thoughts you have on, the anchor point and the light bulb phase and all of that stuff. Okay, that's it for today. I'll leave you there. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already for more content like this. I will talk to you soon. Bye.